Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 15 wide receiver rankings. So for this week, we're going to be talking about the wide receiver position, but at first, I'm going to be going over the matchups at the wide receiver position, talking about who has the best and worst matchups going into the week, and how I think those can specifically affect players that you may be starting, this coming week, or players that you may have not had on your radar that could still be on your waivers. You could pick them up, play them perhaps due to a good matchups. Other than that, we're going to be going over my 1 through 36 rankings at the wide receiver position, and that's basically it. I'll give you my thoughts on all the players going into this week and how I think they will perform. Other than that, hey everybody, how's it going? I just wanted to go ahead, start this video by talking about a couple players specifically. We know that after the reports that have come out today, it is likely that Spencer Ware will not be playing tomorrow in the Thursday night game against the Chargers. You know what I got to do? All right, let's lower that. There we go. That's easier. Against the Chargers. So chances are Damian Williams will be getting the start for the team. But here's my thought process behind it. Ever since Kareem Hunt has gone away, the backfield has pretty much been split up between Spencer Ware and Damian Williams. Now, from my perspective, as of right now, I think they're still going to split reps in the backfield. And they do have Damian Williams, and they also signed Charcandrick West. So, specifically, I think Charcandrick West has an opportunity to come in and get some work in the passing game. That's not to say you can go ahead and start him, but I'm just saying, for those of you who are considering and you have picked up Damian Williams for this week, you might want to be wary. There's a good potential that Charcandrick West takes away all of the receiving game work from him. We know Charcandrick West has been successful within this offense. He played for the team last season, and he took a lot of work away from Kareem Hunt in the passing game. Not a lot, but a good enough amount where you would be thinking, there's a couple touchdowns missing for Kareem Hunt's total box score. Anyway, other than that, other running backs I wanted to mention. Specifically, reports came out today that David Johnson did not practice today. So those of you who own David Johnson, if you have an available bench spot, Chase Edmonds should be on your team right now. He is a backup. He is the handcuff. And we've seen, 2 weeks ago, Chase Edmonds had 2 rushing touchdowns, had a 20-point fantasy game out of nowhere. So those of you who own David Johnson, just to be safe, if you have an open and available spot, which I'm sure many of you do, go ahead and pick up Chase Edmonds. Other than that, Ezekiel Elliott did not practice today. Now, I'm fully confident that he's going to play by Sunday, just like David Johnson, but you never know. Okay, so for those of you who own Zeke, like I mentioned last week, his backup needs to be picked up. Rod Smith is the backup. That needs to be taken care of. Other than that, other injury news that has come out, Carson Wentz is having a back issue as of right now. Back soreness is basically what it's been quoted as. I'm not sure how much to believe, but the report that I read said that there is a good likelihood that he is not playing this week. And if that's the case, and the starting quarterback of the Eagles is Nick Foles, those of you who are struggling at the quarterback position, Nick Foles might not be a terrible play this week, but we'll see. I guess we'll just have to wait and see whether or not Carson Wentz plays. Either way, as of right now, the report from NFL Network's Ian Rappaport is that he is not expected to play. So that could be bad for some of the pieces of that offense, a.k.a. some of the receivers. But then again, Nick Foles, we've seen him be comfortable. We've seen that he has a rapport with Alshon Jeffery and Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz. So it could potentially even help this offense. You never know. Either way, those are just the injury reports that came out today that I wanted to mention. Keep you guys updated on that. Other than that, I'm ready to get into the wide receivers. Hopefully you guys are ready. It is Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow, exciting Thursday night game. I will be going over my Thursday night thoughts on the matter at the end of the video, so stay tuned till that. Other than that, let's get right into it, shall we? Again, this is the Fantasy Football Week 15 wide receiver rankings. We're going to start off by talking about the fantasy points against, the amount of fantasy points given up to the wide receiver position by a specific team on a weekly basis. All of my stats that I go over are in half-point PPR formats. So, to begin, the New Orleans Saints, all season long, they've given up the most points to the wide receiver position. They continue to do so. This past week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, again, they looked great. For the past 5 weeks, the Saints are only giving up an average of 13 and a half points per game Their defense is looking better and better. And to be honest, playing against the Carolina Panthers doesn't seem like much of a risk for me. Looking at it from my perspective, Cam Newton is banged up a little bit, and the wide receivers of the Carolina Panthers, Devin Funchess really isn't anything this season, and you have Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, and I'm not sure if you can rely upon those two. I think they are lower end, or they're about lower end wide receiver 2s, high end wide receiver 3s this week. Again, it is a good matchup in terms of, hey, they're giving up the most points to the wide receiver position, but again, this team is way better than they used to be. A lot of the stats that they gave up earlier on in the season, the shootouts they continuously had, is weighing in on this. So I just keep your eye out. Maybe don't fully buy in on the narrative that their secondary is complete trash, okay? Moving on to number 2. Now, this narrative, okay, the Eagles' secondary is absolutely trash. I mean, it's not because, hey, they're just bad football players. That's not the case. Right, they're in the NFL. These guys earn their keep. But the fact is, they're just beat up. They have very inexperienced players back there, and they're struggling. And teams are being able to take advantage of it. We saw, Amari Cooper have another 200 receiving yard game, 3 receiving touchdowns. Yes, that last reception in overtime, it was a fluke. Okay, I'll give you that. But still, those other deep bombs, you can't tell me that Robert Woods and Brandin Cooks aren't going to be able to feast. We know Jared Goff has looked like a rookie in the last 2 weeks with these defensive coordinators really getting after him. But this coming week against the Eagles in Los Angeles, I think Jared Goff will get back to form. And I think those 2 receivers, especially Brandin Cooks, will be able to find himself some success. I mean, just right off the bat, looking at how many points they're giving up to wide receivers, it's insane. Whew. Either way, that's the Eagles. Moving on to the number 3 team giving up a lot of points is the Green Bay Packers. Now, who plays against the Packers this week? It is Mitchell Trubisky and the Chicago Bears. Okay, well, of the receivers on that team, is there anyone that specifically is going to have a good game? I don't know if you can put your money down on a specific guy to completely go off. But if any of them are going to in the wide receiver core, I'm assuming it's going to be Allen Robinson. He is the number 1 receiver on that team. I think he is the best receiver on that team. And as of right now, Allen Robinson should be at least the wide receiver 2 this week. We'll see it in my rankings, but we've seen him get a good amount of usage. I'm just worried that he might not even be healthy. He's currently questionable. He didn't even practice today. Okay, that is not good. So perhaps when we get there, if this week ends up coming down that Allen Robinson is not playing, Anthony Miller ends up becoming a good option. Taylor Gabriel, those kind of guys, they might end up being better options as the week progresses if Allen Robinson is not healthy. Moving on to number 4, we have the New York Jets. I 100% expect Deshaun Watson in this offense to completely tear them apart. I expect DeAndre Hopkins to have a better week. We haven't seen any life out of him in many weeks. He's just becoming an average wide receiver, and I'm expecting a good game. I want to see 100 yards and a touchdown. That's literally what in 8 receptions at least. Let's get that out of him. All right, moving on. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers giving up a bunch of points. I don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to be able to take advantage of that. So that doesn't really make any difference. The Washington Redskins playing against Cody Kessler. I'm not buying in on that. I understand that, as I mentioned earlier this week on the Monday night waiver wire video, guys like Dede Westbrook or Dante Moncrief, they continue to get opportunities within this offense. So if you're playing in a deeper league, those guys are not bad flex options, perhaps wide receiver 3 options. Moving on, the Carolina Panthers giving up a bunch of points to the wide receiver position. The Carolina Panthers, they're pretty stout against the run. They can get taken advantage of here and there in the running game, but in the passing game, they have been dominated continuously. And here's the issue. That offense, man, they haven't looked good. This team hasn't looked good as of late. They get to play against the best team in the NFL right now. In my opinion, the Saints are the best team. They've looked a little shady, like a little sketchy as of late. But to be honest, I think the Saints are going to be able to handle themselves. And Michael Thomas, Traquan, I don't know about Traquan Smith. Here's the thing about the Saints offense, right? It's pretty much only Michael Thomas that is a dependable receiver. So other than that, I can't really suggest the other receivers on this team. I'm not going to suggest Tre'Quan Smith. Supposedly, Brandon Marshall was signed to this team 4 weeks ago. Where's Brandon Marshall? Do they cut him already? I don't know. Either way, moving on. The San Francisco 49ers, Russell Wilson's going to have a fantastic game. If Doug Baldwin plays, he could be a decent start, but I don't know. We'll see. But either way, Tyler Lockett, great play. Russell Wilson, great play. Moving on, the Tennessee Titans giving up a bunch of points. Could mean that Eli Manning could have a good week. But, again, this also depends on whether or not Odell Beckham plays. If Odell Beckham plays, I mean, I've always talked crap about these corners, Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson. I think they'll be able to take advantage of that. Odell Beckham can have a good game this coming week, end up picking up a win perhaps, if they're able to effectively play on the offense side of the ball. Moving on to the Falcons, giving up a bunch of points. They play against Josh Rosen. And Josh Rosen, to be honest, looked terrible. This offense is just, it's at the point in the season where we really have no hope within this offense. We don't have any trust within Josh Rosen to get plays fantasy-wise, done. So as of right now, can we trust guys like Larry Fitzgerald, pretty much the only dependable wide receiver on that offense? I'm not sure if we can. I want to say that, yes, this is an easier matchup, but this offense has not looked good enough for me to fully commit to yes, he must start this kind of week. Anyway, moving on, the Browns playing on Saturday night. Again, remember that, guys. On Saturday, we have two games. We have the Houston Texans playing the New York Jets, and we also have the Cleveland Browns playing against the Denver Broncos. So do not forget, Saturday we have two games. Keep your lineup set and ready for those games. Moving on, so as I was mentioning, Cleveland Browns giving up some points to the wide receiver position. I don't think the Broncos are going to take advantage of that. Now, that being said, Courtland Sutton did not play well this past week. And to be honest, whenever Courtland Sutton is even given the ball, he just looks slow. Right? I understand he's a bigger receiver, but there are other bigger receivers in the league that look way better than him. They thought, hey, you know what? We're going to replace Demaryius Thomas with the Courtland Sutton kind of player. Courtland Sutton is not a Demaryius Thomas. Yes, I know he's young, but he hasn't been able to step up, and it's hurting him. But other guys like Hamilton that had a pretty big week this past week, wide receivers like that. I think it's Patrick Hamilton, if I'm not mistaken. Let me confirm this. Deshaun Hamilton, and what's the other? I think it's, my goodness. I have to actually figure this out because where are we at here? Is it Tim Patrick? What is his name? Yeah, Tim Patrick. So Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick, right? Both of them had decent weeks. Decent as in, hey, you could potentially play these guys, right? Tim Patrick this past week, 10 targets, 7 receptions for 85 yards. And on the other side, we had Deshaun Hamilton with 9 targets, 7 receptions, 47 yards, and a touchdown. Both of them had over 10 fantasy points and half-point PPR scoring. And this coming week, again, the Cleveland Browns, they may be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but on the other side, we have the Denver Broncos that could potentially still sneak in at a 9-7 record if they win out the next 3. So Case Keenum's going to have to throw the ball. I understand Phillip Lindsay is the number one option on that team, but guys like Hamilton and Patrick stepping up, it doesn't, it sets precedent that there is an opportunity that this team can throw the ball, with missing Emmanuel Sanders. There's got to be someone to step up. So it could be one of these two guys. All right, moving on to the Bears. They're giving up the 12th most points to the wide receiver position. Davante Adams is going to be great. Other than that, can I trust in a guy like Randall Cobb? Can I trust in a guy like MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling? I don't think so. I think unless you're playing Davante Adams, you really just can't trust anybody else within this offense. And even then, Davante Adams is going to be double covered all game long. And Aaron Rodgers, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. So we'll see how that game goes. They're gonna bring the heat. All right. Moving on to the Bengals, giving up the 13th most I'm slurring these words. 13th most points in the league. Honestly, Derek Carr has not looked bad in the last couple weeks. So there's a potential. Hey, Derek Carr could come out and start slinging it, scoring some points here and there. So if you play in a super deep league, okay, I mean super deep league, 14 team or a 16, Jordy Nelson, not a bad play. Okay, but in a super deep league, and perhaps even it has to be a PPR. Otherwise, Jordy Nelson's irrelevant. It could be decent. Let's move on. The Seahawks, Nick Mullins, last time he played against them, threw for 400 yards. I expect Dante Pettis to be good this week. Other than that, Pierre Garçon is on the injured reserve from here on forth. Marquise Goodwin has not looked healthy all season long, so he decided, hey, I'll see you guys next season. I'm waiting for Jimmy Garoppolo to come back. Moving on, the Detroit Lions giving up some points to the wide receiver position. They play against Josh Allen and the Bills. There's a good chance that, as of right now, they're putting McKenzie in at the slot. They're moving Zay Jones back to the outside wide receiver slot, and they have Robert Foster on the other side. One of these receivers is going to have a big game. I'm not sure who, but I have an idea, so you just wait till the rankings. Moving on. Other than that, let's see. The Rams giving up some decent points. Playing against perhaps Nick Foles. Now, if Nick Foles doesn't come out looking good, there is a potential that this wide receiver core could struggle. But then again, we know what Nick Foles is capable of. We've seen him play this season before. And I think coming into the matchup, he played the Rams last season. In the week that it's actually quite funny. Last season, when Carson Wentz tore his ACL, it was against the Los Angeles Rams. It was in Los Angeles. And to be honest, it's just hilarious that now again they're playing the Rams and Carson Wentz is a little banged up. Either way, I don't know. We'll see where that goes with the wide receiver's position. It just depends if he plays or not. Carson Wentz, that is. Anyway, moving on. The Dolphins, I expect Kirk Cousins and this offense to be much improved. John DeFilippo was literally drowning this offense, and I don't even understand what they were trying to accomplish. They weren't running the ball consistently enough, and they weren't giving perhaps it's an offensive line issue that Kirk Cousins wasn't able to get things going. But either way, I expect this offense to be much improved playing against that Miami defense. Moving on, the Broncos are being tough against the wide receiver position, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Chris Harris Jr., he might be done for the season. I think that was somebody had mentioned that. Let me see here. Perhaps that was only last week, but either way, Broncos, is there anybody on the Browns that could potentially put up a fight? We'll see. We'll talk about it in the rankings. Other than that, let's move on. The Raiders, the Steelers, the Patriots, the Kansas City Chiefs, they give up their points. But then again, these teams also, some of them, they give up a lot of points on the ground. So there's a potential for that. That's why these numbers might not be as high. Let's just go down to the very bottom. Let's talk about the tougher matchups. Who plays against the toughest matchup? It is the Redskins, and I don't expect anybody on your team. You should not have a Washington Redskins on your team unless it's Adrian Peterson, and even then, he should probably be on the bench this week. Other than that, the Bills are playing tough. Kenny Golladay, I had a tough time even ranking him this week. After the performance he put up last week, after what Matthew Stafford has done as of late, and after what he has done since Marvin Jones has been gone, I really have very little confidence in Kenny Golladay, especially when he has to play against the Bills' tough secondary this week. Micah Hyde is going to be all over this boy. Moving on, the Cowboys playing tough, but then again, T.Y. Hilton, he's looking too good to be able to sit on your bench. The Ravens are playing great, but then again, another guy, Mike Evans. Can we trust him? To an extent, yes, but again, this is another tough matchup. Other than that, looking at these other teams that are good in the secondary, the Vikings, the Colts, the Chargers, the Giants, and the Cardinals, Texans. Okay, either way, we'll talk about these players. We'll talk about where they stack up against each other this coming week. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Do what you must with these rankings. Sort it correctly, whatever. Either way, I'm ready. Hope you guys are ready. Let's talk about my rankings for Week 15 of the fantasy football season. All right. Whew. All right, number 1, we have DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, that is correct. I am predicting the resurrection of DeAndre Hopkins. This season, he has not been great. Okay, coming off of last season where he was the number 1 wide receiver in half-point PPR scoring formats in terms of total points. He's come into this season and he hasn't really looked great, right? We would have expected, with Deshaun Watson as his full-time quarterback, not having to catch balls from guys like Tom Savage or T.J. Yates, he's going to be more productive and more consistent as the season progresses. That has not been the case. And to be honest, it has hurt many of the owners who have taken DeAndre Hopkins so high. DeAndre Hopkins has pretty much come back down to earth. Yes, he is still a top 5 wide receiver. That's a fact. Okay, thus far this season. Let me go ahead and find this. How many points has he put up comparatively to other receivers? Let's see what he's ranked at in a half-point PPR scoring format. So in a half-point PPR scoring format, wow, he is behind Juju. Oh my goodness, Juju, what? He's the number 8 receiver. Juju's number 7? You got to be kidding me. Oh my God, Juju. Oh goodness. Let me see. Why is Juju so high? Dude, oh my goodness. That's insane. Okay, anyway. So he's a number 8 wide receiver. Now, you probably drafted him expecting top 3 numbers. That's not what you got. It's unfortunate. But this coming week, plays against the Jets on Saturday night. I expect him to be able to feast. And he's my number 1 this week. Either way, you're starting him. So number 1, number 5 doesn't really make a difference. I think he could have a really good week against the poor Jets secondary. All right, moving on to number 2, Michael Thomas, playing against a tough not a tough secondary, actually a weaker secondary himself, playing against the Panthers. He is the only wide receiver option on that team. Yes, he's going to get double covered and the works, but he is the number 6 wide receiver on the season thus far. He is the number 1 wide receiver on that Saints team, and any part of the Saints offense that you can have, Michael Thomas is he's going to be able to feast on Monday night. Should have a good game. He's my number 2. My number 3, we have Antonio Brown. Now, like I just mentioned 10-15 seconds ago, we have Juju Smith as the number 7 wide receiver on the season thus far in half-point PPR scoring. It's insane that you can have Juju Smith and Antonio Brown, 2 of the top 7 wide receivers on the season. But either way, Antonio Brown did not look like himself this past week. But that is mainly because of the fact that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't playing for majority of the game. When Ben Roethlisberger's out, Antonio Brown is not Antonio Brown. We don't have the same production. We don't get Josh Dobbs throwing him the ball. So that's mainly because of the injury last week, that Antonio Brown was not able to produce. For those of you who were punished because of this, that's very unfortunate because you've relied upon Antonio Brown all season long. An injury to the quarterback like that just can deflate your week. But either way, coming into this week, playing against the New England Patriots, I expect Antonio Brown to have a great week. Moving to number 4, we have Julio Jones, a guy that, goodness gracious, he's got a good matchup in my opinion. I don't believe that the Cardinals secondary is as good as advertised. Yes, they were able to play tough against the Lions last week, but the Lions aren't the Falcons offense. The Falcons will get it done, and Julio will continue to get his 10-plus targets a week and be fantasy relevant. He's my number 4. Number 5, we have Tyreek Hill. Now, I have the little asterisk next to him because of the fact that, you never know if he's going to play. Currently, he is considered as questionable. He was limited in practice today, was jogging around. That's the report. So if Tyreek Hill is to play, he is my number 5 wide receiver. He plays against the Los Angeles Chargers, who gave up a bunch of points to him in Week 1. In Week 1, when they played against the Los Angeles Chargers, guy had 38.8 fantasy points with 169 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And he had a rushing touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, or was it a punt return? He had a 3rd touchdown somewhere in that game. I know for a fact. But either way, as of right now, if he is to play this week, banged up or not, I mean, as long as he's on that field, I have confidence, and I have to start him. I would have to start him. He's gotten me this far, right? Moving on to number 6, we have Keenan Allen. The other side of that matchup, the Chargers, they're going to have to keep up within this, within this game. I understand that if the Kansas City Chiefs, they're banged up without Tyreek Hill perhaps, or without guys like Spencer Ware, there may be an opportunity for the Chargers to maybe slow down the pace of this game and be able to run the ball a little bit more in order to keep this game closer and then take advantages. But either way, I expect Keenan Allen to continue to get work. He has been on fire as of late in the latter half of the season. Ever since their bye week, Keenan Allen has been fantastic, posting great numbers. He has, in fact, caught 5 touchdowns in a row. In the last 5 weeks, he's caught 5 touchdowns. Has been great, continues to get a bunch of targets. I mean, I expect great things, and especially because Austin Eckler's out now and Melvin Gordon's injured still. They're going to continue to count on this guy to make plays within this offense. All right, let's move on to number 7. We have Adam Thielen. Man, Adam Thielen, why? Why did you do this to us, Adam? Adam Thielen, he infamously started so on fire this season to the point where many of the teams that had Adam Thielen were thinking, man, I'm winning a championship because of this guy. Catches a touchdown every week. He's consistent as heck. He's putting up 20 points a week. Now, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been terrible. But for Adam Thielen standards, it hasn't been great. You were getting accustomed to the idea where, hey, this is like an Antonio Brown. This guy's going to get me 20 points a week. You became accustomed to that, and as of late, having only put up 10 points in each of the last 2 weeks, it's a little bit of a downgrade. You're missing 10 points there. Hopefully your other pieces on your team have picked up the slack. But either way, this coming week, playing against the Miami Dolphins, I expect Adam Thielen to be fantastic. I expect him to be able to feast. We're going to see the old Adam Thielen. John DeFilippo is gone, and I expect this offense to turn over a new leaf, try to pick up 3 games in a row, and make the playoffs as a wild card. Either way, I expect him to be great. He's my number 7. Number 8, we have Juju Smith-Schuster. Speaking of Juju, man, Juju Smith-Schuster is insane. Some of these games that he's had this season, they're pretty insane numbers. In the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 games of 29 points or more. That is insane. Now, what could we attribute it to? Well, when the other side of the field has Antonio Brown on it and teams are having to double cover Antonio Brown, Juju's going to continue to find himself open. On top of that, with James Conner being injured the last couple weeks, they've had to rely upon the wide receivers of this team more and more, and that is what Juju's been doing. He's been stepping up. He should have had a 3rd touchdown last week, or at least a second earlier touchdown. There was a play in the back of the end zone where he caught the ball, brought his feet down. He got both of his toes in. He had possession. They did not count it. Potentially could have had more points this last week. But either way, this week against New England, should have a good game. He's my number 8. Number 9, we have Odell Beckham with an asterisk next to him if he is to play. Like I mentioned before, the Tennessee Titans give up a bunch of points to the wide receiver position, and Odell Beckham is as elite as they come. This coming week, no matter what happens, if Odell Beckham is healthy and playing, I expect him to be a top 10 receiver. He's my number 9. Moving on to number 10. T.Y. Hilton playing against the tough Cowboys secondary, who has been, better than we all expected them to be this season. But here's the deal with T.Y. Hilton, okay? Last season we didn't get T.Y. Hilton that we wanted, right? T.Y. Hilton just he was gone because Andrew Luck, with that injury, disappeared. All of his production, his targets, Jacoby Brissett was not going to give him that kind of production. Coming into this season, he had a couple good games to start. Ended up having some injuries in the middle of the season, but as of late, has been coming on strong. In the last 4 weeks in fantasy, 32 points, 16 points, 11.7, 24.4. He has had some great weeks. Each of the last 3 weeks, 10-plus targets. Yards posted as 155, 125, 77, and 199. He continues to see more and more work as the weeks go on. I don't care if they're playing against a tough Dallas secondary. I believe in Andrew Luck, and I believe in Harvey Dent. And I believe in T.Y. Hilton, okay? If you know where that's from, bless your soul. If you don't, you need to go watch a movie over again, maybe 16 more times over again, and you'll get the reference. No, it's just once, but if you haven't seen it 16 times and you know what I'm mentioning, comment down below. Hey, okay. Moving on to number 11, we have Davante Adams. Davante Adams right now, he's the number 2 wide receiver on the season. He has been absolutely fantastic. He's caught more touchdowns than anybody in the NFL in the last 3 seasons combined. Already has 12 touchdowns, and he continues to rack up points. He is as consistent as they come in the wide receiver position. He's starting up this week, but he plays against a tougher defense in the Chicago Bears. They give up points to the wide receiver position, sure, but what they were able to do to the Rams last week, it sets precedent. There is a fear. Like, I have a legitimate fear that they could do the same thing to Aaron Rodgers. I know Aaron Rodgers is way better than Jared Goff. You're not going to end up seeing Aaron Rodgers play that bad. But if they're able to stop the run and they're able to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be pretty difficult for Davante Adams to be able to catch as many balls as we expect him to do and to have as much production as we expect. In week 1, when they played against the Bears, it wasn't the same Bears team, right? That Bears team came out, they got a hot start early, and then Aaron Rodgers came over and take over and with a nice comeback win. I don't expect them to make it as competitive anymore. I expect the Bears to get all over them, but still, Davante Adams should be good. He's a 15-point guy. No matter what the matchup, he's still a consistent 15 points in half-point PPR. All right, let's move on to number 12, the last of my wide receiver ones for this week. As I mentioned earlier, the Eagles secondary they've been getting burnt. And if Amari Cooper is going to put 200 yards on you, I expect Jared Goff to come out and have to prove himself. Okay, the last 2 weeks he has not looked good. This Rams offense, even when they put up 30 points against the Lions, did not look good. So this coming week, playing against the Eagles, I expect them to come back out. They need to reestablish their offense and get back to what they were good at. They have a specific scheme that they're good at. Now, these defensive coordinators, as of late, they've been clamping up on them. I expect I expect Robert Woods to come out, have himself a good week. He's my number 12. Number 13, Stefon Diggs. Okay, just like Adam Thielen. If, in fact, this offense is going to get better, which I expect it full-heartedly to do, they're going to open this up more. They're going to run the ball consistently, and eventually Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen are both going to benefit from it. But Stefon Diggs is practically the Juju Smith-Schuster of this offense. When the other side of the field is being packed by Adam Thielen, whether he's in the slot or outside, teams are putting as much coverage on him as possible. It leaves opportunities for Stefon Diggs. This past week dropped a touchdown, or it wasn't really a drop. The guy got in front of him, but definitely could have made a play on the ball. Could have been a pretty, a little bit better week, but still, he's as consistent as they come. Even when he has poor games, it still ends up like Adam Thielen with 10 points. Either way, let's move on. Let's talk about number 14, Brandin Cooks. Goodness, Brandin Cooks, Robert Woods. They both need to step up. I expect them to do so, guys. I understand they've been hot garbage as of late, but this offense, they have to turn it around. And this is as good of a week as they could possibly find to do so. Moving on to number 15, Amari Cooper. Now, you may be thinking, Andrew, man, this is too low for Amari Cooper. Well, I wouldn't say that technically, right? Amari Cooper was widely benefited from having 2 long touchdowns, having a 60-yard touchdown and a 40-yard touchdown, and then a touchdown which somebody tipped the ball. That is not going to be a consistent weekly thing. Teams are going to keep an eye on that. They're going to put a safety over the top. This is all one-on-one coverage work, right? The Colts, they'll be able to take care of it. They'll make sure that he doesn't completely lose his mind this week. But either way, Amari Cooper has looked good. He has found himself a confidence, a swagger within this offense. Dak Prescott knows he is the number 1 receiver. He continues to find him the ball. And this coming week, he should have a good week. He's 15. Number 16, Julian Edelman. Man, Edelman is so good. I mean, of all the guys that are just so consistent on a weekly basis, Edelman, ever since coming back from his suspension, what was it, 4-game suspension? Goodness, he has been on fire. Let me go ahead and, let's find this. Thank you very much. I'm just going to read these stats, okay? I'm not going to read the stats, I'm going to read the fantasy points, okay? So since coming back in half-point PPR scoring formats, the points have been 9.2, okay, which was a little bit rough, but no big deal. That's a pretty average game. But since then, 14.1, 12.1, 16.2, 14.3, 15.1, 16.4, 7.5, and 19.1. The dude has been amazing. Since coming back, in the couple weeks that he's been back, about 7 weeks he's been back, he's been great. And to be honest, going forward, especially against the Pittsburgh defense, which I think he can be able to pick apart in the slot position, I expect him to do good things. He's my number 16. Number 17, we have Tyler Lockett. He is literally the number 1 wide receiver on this offense. There is no more Doug Baldwin. We have to rely upon an injured guy running around the field. I'm not sure we can completely put our faith into that. So as of right now, Tyler Lockett is the way to go. They play against the 49ers. And last time we played against the 49ers, right, 2 weeks ago, obviously didn't have a great performance, but it was 1 catch, 54 yards, and a touchdown. So even his floor is becoming a broken play for a touchdown that ends up giving you about 15 fantasy points. So not bad. Either way, I expect him to see more target, or at least have more than 1 catch this week for sure. And I expect him to have a good game. He's my number 17. Number 18, we have Mike Evans. Plays against the tough Ravens defense. Even though it is a tougher defense, he is still a top 18 wide receiver, as you see. And I'm sure you don't own 3 guys above him on this list. If you do, okay, not only are you lucky, but there must be a problem on your roster. You might not have a tight end, or your running backs are thin. There has to be an issue. Otherwise, goodness gracious, you drafted perfectly. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the last 18 guys that I wanted to mention. All right, number 19, we're not going to talk about this person. This is the man who shall not be named. that is the ranking. So do what you must. But I will not be mentioning this person's name because ever since I have stopped, the performance has been better. So we're going to continue to ride along with it. All right, moving on to number 20. We have Josh Gordon playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, here's the thing about Josh Gordon. In the first half, he ends up doing nothing. But then the second half starts to show up. And what happens? Josh Gordon continues to get some catches. Oh, he gets some work here and there. Catches a touchdown. Has 90 yards by the end of the fourth quarter. How? I don't know. But in the first half, he barely sees work. Guys like Cordero Patterson, Gronkowski. There's so many mouths to feed within this offense, but still, I expect Josh Gordon to consistently be good. This is going to be a higher scoring game, in my opinion. We just saw the Patriots get out of a shootout in which they nearly lost, but still, I expect Josh Gordon to be a big part of this offense. He's my number 20 this week. Number 21, we have Tyler Boyd playing against the Raiders secondary. Jeff Driscoll has not looked bad. To be honest, he hasn't looked that bad. If they had A.J. Green, they could be winning some of these games more consistently. They were able to compete with the Chargers this past week. So this coming week, Tyler Boyd looked pretty decent this past week. I expect, because of the fact that it's an easier matchup, for him to get some more work here. So he's my number 21. All right, number 22, Corey Davis. Now, Corey Davis, this last week, it was a Derrick Henry show. But that being said, if you watched the game on Thursday, you saw Corey Davis let a ball go right between his hands for a touchdown. Easily could have caught a touchdown. Would have ended up with, at least 10 fantasy points. He would have. But what did he end up with? Goose egg of trash, right? This coming week, plays against the Giants. It's going to be a little bit of a different, game plan. They're not going to just continuously run the ball with Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis. I expect them to pass the ball more, and I expect Corey Davis to be decent. He is my... Wait, why? Okay. He's my number 22. Number 23, we have DJ Moore. As I mentioned before, they play against the Saints. It is a better matchup, but he is a low-end wide receiver too. I don't put much faith in the wide receivers and or the quarterback or the offense, much less of the Panthers. I 100% believe in Christian McCaffrey fantasy-wise, but do I believe in the idea that they are going to be able to compete and put up a bunch of points and have make it a shootout? I don't subscribe to that idea. So either way, he's my number 23. Moving on to number 24. If Allen Robinson, like I mentioned before, if he's not healthy this week, I would see, Anthony Miller, Taylor Gabriel, they're getting a little bit of a boost. But either way, if Allen Robinson plays, he's healthy this week. He's my number 24, playing against the it's an easier matchup against the Green Bay Packers secondary. The Green Bay Packers are decent against the run, but in the passing game, they've struggled this season. Moving on to 25, Alshon Jeffery. Now, whether it's Carson Wentz or if it's Nick Foles, I expect Alshon Jeffery to have a better week this week. Had a touchdown this past week. Continues to get a little bit more work in the offense. The offense of the Eagles they don't look good. Okay, even though the game went to overtime this past week, a lot of it was on the I would say the mistakes that the Cowboys continuously made. I mean, the Cowboys had double the offensive yardage than the Eagles, and the Eagles were still able to compete with them. That says a lot. The Eagles, yes, they act upon opportunity this coming week against the Rams. The Rams are going to put up a lot of points. So whether they keep up or not, I expect Alshon Jeffery to be involved. He's number 25. Number 26, we have Larry Fitzgerald. Again, I have a tough time saying that he is a must-start. That's why I have him as a higher-end wide receiver 3. He is the number one option of that offense. Therefore, he gets my blessing per se. But then again, it is not looked good for him. In those weeks that he was able to consistently catch touchdowns, sure, he was good. But in the last couple of weeks, not getting into that end zone, he's just been an average player. That's why he's at number 26. Number 27, Kenny Golladay. Same kind of deal. I'm having a hard time playing these kind of guys, but they are number one wide receivers on their respective offenses. Their offensive have not looked good as of late, so I have less confidence in them. But then again, if there's anybody on those teams to get the reception for the touchdown or have those big games, it is these kind of guys. Kenny Golladay is my number 27. 28 is Curtis Samuel. I expect him to continue to be relevant. He has looked good this season. As of late, he continues to find himself some fantasy value. And, it's mainly because he is just a Swiss Army knife of this offense. They can put him anywhere, and he's going to be able to make plays. Continues to see a lot of targets in the last couple weeks. 11 targets, 8 targets. Has had 10 plus fantasy points and half-point PPR each of the last 4 weeks. He is a good flex play if you were looking thin at the flex position, especially against such a good matchup. It could be a good week for Curtis Samuel. But then again, he is a flex play at around 10 points a week. Therefore, he's a wide receiver 3. Moving on to number 29, we have Dante Pettis. Now, Pettis could always break out. He's scored a bunch of touchdowns as of late, but can he continue to be good? I expect him to be good. Nick Mullins, the last time they played against the Seattle Seahawks, had himself 400 passing yards. And if Dante Pettis is out there and he's pretty much the only receiver on that offense, we have Kevin Bourne on the other side of the field. I expect Dante Pettis to continue to find value, and he should have a good week as a wide receiver 3 flex. Moving on to number 30, Golden Tate. We know that the last time we saw Nick Foles continuously used he used Nelson Aguilar, who was sitting in the slot for a majority of the time while he was there. Since they've brought in Golden Tate, he's pretty much taken over that slot position. Now, if Golden Tate is to be paired up with Nick Foles, there is an opportunity that he could step up, have a better game than he did this past week. 1.2 points. That's why these guys are wide receiver 3s, because they have the upside of maybe making some plays, and then they also could just end up being garbage. But either way, he's my number 30 this week. Again, the difference between a Pettis and a Tate, it really actually, Pettis is so much better. Golden Tate is just he actually might. I'm honestly considering not even having him on this list. Now that I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and I'm literally getting blasted by the light. I can see the light. I feel like Golden Tate might not even warrant a 30 ranking. She should be eliminated. Either way. Let's move on to number 31, Sterling Shepard. If Odell Beckham is not there, he will move up in the rankings. But either way, this is a poor secondary that has not played well. Against the wide receiver position, they've given up a bunch of points. And Sterling Shepard could potentially find himself some fantasy value due to that. Number 32, Doug Baldwin, with the asterisk next to him, assuming he plays. He's a wide receiver 3 at best. Other than that, if he's questionable, I don't want to touch him this week. I understand it's a favorable matchup, but we know that the Seahawks want to run the ball consistently. And there's also guys like David Moore or Jerron Brown. Nick Vannett could somehow catch touchdowns for the Tyler Lockett, and they might just stay away from Doug Baldwin. Moving on to number 33, Adam Humphries. Didn't have a great week this past week, but then again, Adam Humphries continues to be, he is a consistent enough wide receiver that you can trust in him as a wide receiver 3 or flex. But if you have to put in Adam Humphries and expect automatic production on a weekly basis, you're going to struggle a little bit, because he's not a guy that, without a doubt is matchup proof and can be 100% successful. But this coming week, he has a tougher matchup. I expect them to have to continuously throw the ball in order to stay in the game, which is the Buccaneers staying in the game against the Ravens. So Adam Humphries could have some good value. Number 34, Calvin Ridley. Please, Calvin Ridley, do something relevant, just for all of us. Okay, of the rookie wide receivers, you are one of the better ones. So maybe come out and have a good week, perhaps, maybe. What did you do this past week? Let's see. 1.5 points. You had such a juicy matchup against Green Bay. Man, he has not looked good as of late. Goodness gracious. That's disappointing. Wow. He's had 5 points in the last 2 weeks combined. Goodness gracious. Now that I'm looking at Calvin Ridley, I'm thinking, goodness, that might be rough. All right, moving on to number 35, Demaryius Thomas. Again, if DeAndre Hopkins is my number 1 receiver, right, they're going to spread out the ball a bunch here. But Lamar Miller's going to get some work. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get some work. Perhaps Kiki Cutie if he's healthy. Alfred Blue. But Demaryius Thomas is the number 2 wide receiver on this team. He should be able to find himself some fantasy relevance. And the last wide receiver I wanted to mention is Kenny Stills. Going into a tougher matchup playing against the Vikings. But then again, if he continues to see the amount of targets he's seen in the last couple of weeks, finds an end zone, or just continuously makes plays, he could potentially have some good fantasy value. Other than that, there are other guys that I wanted to mention, but again, we are sitting at a 36-man list. If you have any questions, go down to the comment section, hit me up. Have your question in before, just get it in by Friday. early Saturday could help. I will be answering questions Friday and Saturday in order to help you guys out because, again, we have 2 Saturday games, so remember that. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button, like down below, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Oh, no. Before we leave, we got to talk about Thursday night game. Okay, so Patrick Mahomes, he's a start. Phillip Rivers, he is a start. Justin Jackson, yes, please. Damian Williams, because he's probably starting, yes, please. Moving on to the wide receiver positions. If Tyreek Hill plays, I'll take it. Keenan Allen, I'll take it. Travis Kelce, 100%. Is there any other wide receivers on the Chargers I am feeling comfortable with? Okay, there's only Mike Williams and there's Tyrell Williams. Now, between the two, it's pretty much a toss-up on who ends up producing, I would say, because, then again, we're looking at 2 wide receivers that, every other week are good, right? They're not consistent enough within this offense to be good. Let's see. Mike Williams in the last couple weeks, 6 points, 16 points, 6 points, 6 points. All right, consistently average. All right, let's talk about Tyrell Williams. In the last couple weeks, 0, 1.9, 2.9. All right, congratulations. If a wide receiver is going to go off within this team, it is Mike Williams. That is my final answer. On the other side, if in fact Tyreek Hill does not play, okay, just by chance, Tyreek Hill does not play, where does that leave you with fantasy value? Sammy Watkins is not playing this week, so that would leave you with Chris Conley and Kelvin Benjamin. In my opinion, if Kelvin Benjamin's playing, I'd probably play him. If Tyreek Hill's out, yeah, why not, right? And then Chris Conley should play if Tyreek Hill's out. 100%. He would be the main benefactor. He would end up being, about a mid-range wide receiver too, because, I don't care what wide receivers out there. Patrick Mahomes getting you the ball, period. Anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on the matter. Tight end, the position of the I don't want any defense. Do not play the Chargers or the Chiefs defense. Do not. That is a trap. You will end up with negative points by the end of the night. Kickers, sure. Butker and Bagley, sure. Start them both. This is going to be a high-scoring game. Either way, thank you, everybody, for watching. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're going to be talking quarterbacks. So if you have any questions on quarterbacks, hold them until tomorrow. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.